Boker is Daf Yomi is Mem Zion of Kesubos 47. We're going to begin on the bottom of Mem Vav Mobez, 2 lines from the bottom. Gemara has established that the father is able to betroth his own daughter to Kesef by accepting money, Shtar by accepting a contract, Ubiyah, or by telling her she has to engage in Bia. So Minon, what's our source for this idea that the father can also accept her betrothal through Shtar and through Bia? So Amar Karav, so Ishacher, the verse says, with respect to a woman who got divorced, that she married another man. So we say Iskush Havayos Lahadadi. From the fact that it says these words, Vaiso Ishacher, we say that we compare the words of Haisa is the word of Havaya, meaning to say it's an expression of Kedushin of betrothal. We compare all the forms of betrothal to each other. So just like a father can betroth her with Kesef, so too the father can betroth his daughter with Shtar and with Bia. So then the Talmud tells us that the Mishnah had stated that the father has the rights, Zakai b'mitziasa. He has the rights to her lost objects, meaning to say that if she found an object, the father has the right to take it. If she's a katana or a nara. Gemara asks, what's the reason for this? Gemara explains on the top of 47a, Mishum Eva, which means on account of animosity. What does that mean on account of animosity? That since, this is Rashi's explanation, since he's not technically, biblically speaking, required to support her, if we're going to say, but the rabbis instituted that anyways, he has to support her. So if we said that she gets to keep the objects she finds, he's going to be upset. He's going to say, well, then I'm not going to support her. It's Rashi's explanation. Tosfos gives a different explanation. Tosfos says, well, since the father has a lot of authority over her, he can marry her off, as we said, and he can marry her off to somebody who's not necessarily somebody who she'd want to marry, somebody who's manuval, somebody who's mukashlin, the person who is not attractive to her. So therefore, since we don't want to create a fight between them, we allow the father to take her the objects that she finds. And also the father is entitled to his daughter's salary. We know, and this is while she's a minor girl or an adolescent. What's the source for this idea? How do we know that the girl gets that? How do we know that the father gets the salary of the girl? Because it states, if a man sells his daughter to be a slave, this is the law of the Amma Ivriya. Then such a girl, she sold as a slave, the person who she is sold to can either marry her, have a son marry her, or release her by the time she's 12. So ma'ama, just like a slave girl, ma'aseyadel rabba, just like this Jewish girl who's sold as a slave, her master gets her salary. Afbas ma'aseyadel avia. So too this girl, her father gets her salary. So that's the source for the idea. That we compare the daughter to a slave, just like the master gets her salary, so too the father gets her salary. Gemara asks, maybe this only refers to a minor girl, because he's allowed to sell the minor girl, but he's not allowed to sell the nara. But the adolescent girl, where he's not allowed to sell her, maybe she gets to keep the salary because the father's not allowed to sell her. So the Gemara says, Mistabra da via have. It's more logical to assume that the salary of his daughter, even Benara, goes to the father. Because if you were going to say that the salary does not belong to the father. That which the father has the right, which we've been discussing, to marry her off to whoever he wants, and he's allowed to marry her off whenever he wants, when she's a minor girl or as a nara. So if that's the case, how would he, if he doesn't have the rights to her salary, how would he be able to do that? He's costing her a day of work. And so therefore, from the fact that he's allowed to marry her off, it proves that he gets her salary. So the Gemara asks several questions about that. Parach Rav Chai says maybe that's not a good answer. Maybe all he does is he marries her off, and he gives her the day's wages because she can't go to work that day. He says, "Don't worry, I'll pay you those wages." That's question number one. Inami demasar abu ayla. Maybe he married her off at night, and at night her day job is over. Or inami demasar abu shabbasos v'yom tovim. Or maybe he married her off on Shabbos or Yontif, where a person is obviously not allowed to work. So maybe under all those circumstances, that's how he married her off. And so therefore, there's no concern that she's missing her job. So, so those are Rav Achai's three questions. So therefore, for that reason, the Gemara says, El Katana lo tzricha kra. So we don't need this verse of the Amma Ivriyah to teach us that a father gets his minor daughter's salary, the Katana salary, because Hashas the Buni Mizabu on my say Demibai. Well, if he can sell her, for sure he can get her salary. So the only reason why we need a verse is for the Nara. So, and even though Rashi explains that the main verse of the Am Ivriyah is by a Katana, nevertheless it's an extra verse because it says Am Ivriyah, and so therefore it's comparing it. So since it doesn't apply to a bas, to a minor girl, we're going to use it to compare to a nara. How can we say that he marries her off on Shabbos and Yontif? Tosos asks his questions. Could we say Moed Katan? It says in Tosos on our page. It says V'samachta b'chagecha, that you're allowed to marry. You should rejoice on your festival. V'lo b'ishtecha. Tosos says you're not allowed to marry somebody on Chol Moed, because you're not allowed to be mixing one joy with another joy. And so therefore, how was he able to marry her on Shabbos and Yontif? How was Rav Achai able to give this suggestion? So the Gemara says, that Tosfos says two answers. Tosfos' first answer is, he says, Iko Meimar, what we could say is the Hachi Iri Sha'achas Lefnei Yom Tov. We could say that what we're referring to is where he married her off 1 hour before Yom Tov. Shuka Yom Tov Le'inyan Melacha. So the Tosefes D'Oraisa Ubetela Ba'usa Shamana Melacha. So it could be the first answer is he married her off on a time where you're not allowed to do work, but it doesn't yet fully have the Kedusha, the holiness of the Yontif. That's 1 hour before Yontif. Or alternatively, Tosfos gives a second answer that the father married her off on Yontif, but there was no meal. So therefore, it's not a violation of not mixing one joy with another joy. So says the Gemara that the father has the rights to annul the vows of his katana and his nara. Annul the vows. It says that he's allowed to do it bin urel, and she's still a nara in her father's home. The father can accept her divorce. What's the source for this idea that the father can accept this divorce? It says she went and she married another man. So we compare the divorce to the marriage. Just like the divorce is allowed, so too the marriage. So whatever rights the father has in the marriage, he also has to accept the divorce on her behalf. And the father does not eat if the daughter has property and which pushes off some dividends. The father does not have the rights to those dividends while his daughter is alive. Rather, they go into a trust. And Tana Rabbanan, the Brai says, "Ha'av eino ochal peros b'chayapi." So, father does not eat, does not consume the dividends of his minor daughter. We have to wait until she becomes an adult, and then she gets to keep them. In the meantime, they go into a trust for her. Whereas Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda says, "Ha'av ochal peros b'chayapi." Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda says, the father does consume the dividends while his daughter is alive. What's the dispute between Tanakama says he doesn't get the dividends and Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda says he does? Tanakama savar bishama ba'al takino rabbanam peri, that we understand why the husband has the rights to his wife's dividends. It's called nichse malug, that the wife retains the principal during the duration of the marriage, but the husband has the rights to the dividends. We understand why the came in Manibul Parak. If the husband wasn't getting the dividends, he's not going to redeem her if she's captured. But the father, why would we say that a father, the Mimna Parak, you think a father is not going to redeem his daughter? Of course he's going to redeem his daughter. So therefore we don't have to give him the dividends. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda Savar, Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda is in the position of Nami Mimana Vula Parak. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda is in the position that the father is also going to refrain from redeeming her. Why? Savar Kisa Nikita Ilava Tays of a Tiprok Nasha. He's going to say, listen, she has a full wallet. Let her go and redeem herself. Says the Mishnah, that if she got married, the father has certain extra rights that the husband doesn't have. What are those extra rights? The husband has certain extra rights that the father doesn't have. What are those extra rights? Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis discussed the following situation. Kasava peros susu kelim she'avo imam beis avil beis baal. Let's say the father writes her a dowry that she's going to take into the marriage with her. When she gets married to her husband, she's going to take with her certain fruits, certain clothing, certain utensils. Mesa, but let's say she dies after the betrothal, but before the full marriage, then the husband does not have the rights to these things because when does the husband get the dowry? Only if she got fully married. And so therefore, he doesn't have the right to these things. Whereas Mishim Rabbi Nassan taught that the husband does indeed have the rights to these things. So the Gemara says, Lema bepukta, the Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbanan. Maybe this machokes is also the same machokes that we're going to see when we get to the 5th chapter, Parak Afalpi, between Rabbi Elazar and the Rabbanan, and they have a dispute there where if a woman was divorced or widowed from the betrothal, not from the full marriage, that the Tanna Kama says she's entitled to not only the full ksuba, but also the Tosefes ksuba, the additional parts of the ksuba. Whereas Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says she's only entitled to the standard ksuba, but not the Tosefes ksuba, because the husband only married her. He only promised her all those things because he wanted to consummate the marriage. So that was the intent of the contract. So therefore, in this case, the Rabbanan say that the husband doesn't inherit it, because it's only from the betrothal. Whereas Rabbi Nazim says he still gets it. So let's say that this dispute connects to the dispute between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, where we are in this Arma, and this Garasha, Beiman, and Nisu, and Beiman, and Erison. Let's say that she's widowed or divorced. Doesn't matter if it's from the Erison or from the Nisuin. Govas, I call the Tanakh there says you collect that he's going to collect she's going to collect everything, the full ksuba. And at first glance, maybe this is like Rabbi Nassan, who says that the husband has the full rights to the whole marriage from the Erisin. So too, she collects everything from the Erisin. Whereas Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, "Menanasuin gova sakol, umena Erisin besua gova masayim v'amana mana." Whereas Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that from the full marriage that the husband would that she would collect everything, but from the betrothal she would only collect the standard ksuba. So let's say that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah here is going to be like so. Let's say the Gemara says. Well, first let's finish this Mishnah from Nundad. Shalo Kasaval Manasal Konsa, that he only wrote her on top of Mem Zayin base. He only wrote her all this extra Tosefes because he intended to fully marry her. So let's say that according to the opinion of Rebbe of the Tanakami here, who says that the husband does not acquire her dowry if she died at the betrothal, maybe holds like Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, that the marriage until the Nisuin, you don't get everything. Whereas Rabbi Nassan, who says that the husband has the rights to everything, even from the betrothal, maybe holds like the Rabbanan, that the marriage, that the moment you write to Ksuba, you get everything, even without the full Nisuin. The Gemara says, not necessarily the case. Well, the Koyamak Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah. It's possible that everybody agrees with Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah that if the husband dies before the Nisuin, she doesn't get the Tosefes Ksuba, because why? According to the one here who says that the husband doesn't collect a full dowry, well, it's clear he holds like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that since the marriage wasn't fully consummated, he's not going to get the full dowry here. Just like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, she doesn't collect the full Ksuba. Mandamar Zacha, the one who says no, nevertheless, he would collect the full dowry. When does Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah say she doesn't collect the full ksuba? Because it's his money, the husband's money going to her. The only reason why he wrote in, I'm giving you a tosefes, ksuba, I'm giving you this additional money, because he had in mind to fully marry her. And they didn't get fully married, so he doesn't have to give it to her. But from her to him, her dowry she's giving to him, maybe I feel Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah modi. Maybe even Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah would concede that he's going to be able to collect the full dowry because that what she gave him the dowry in order to be quote unquote married. And guess what? And she indeed didn't marry him. So it was a betrothal, and they were betrothed. So maybe he would be able to collect under these circumstances. We also learned that the husband is responsible to provide for his wife's mizonos, meaning he has to support his wife, to provide her food and clothing, and he has to give her food to eat. So Tana Rabbanan tikmu mizonosah tachas ma'aseh. The rabbis instituted that the husband has to support the woman, his wife, because in exchange, because he's also collecting her salary. And so therefore, he's obligated to support her in exchange for her salary. Kfurasa, he's obligated to bury her. He's obligated not just to bury her, but also to provide her for a tombstone and to take care of her grave. Tachas Kesubos. This is an exchange for, Rashi says, the nedunya, the dowry that she brings with her into the marriage. And so therefore that this idea that he has to bury her, that's an exchange for the ksuva, that the dowry that she's bringing in. It's not the normal word, the normal way we use the word ksuva, but that's what it means here. And then it states in the Mishnah, Lefikach, or in the Brisa, Lefikach Baal Ochel Peiros. And so therefore, for this reason, the husband is able to consume the dividends of her estate. And the Gemara says, well, Peiros, Mandachar Shmaya, why are we talking about the dividends here? This Brisa is missing some words and this is what it refers to. Tiknu mizonosel tachas masiyada. They instituted that he has to support her because he collects her salary. Upirkona tachas peros. We were missing this very key line. He has to redeem her because in exchange she gets her dividends of her estate. Uklurasa tachas ksubasa. And he also has to bury her in exchange for a dowry. So we see from here that the husband consumes her peros. And the Gemara asks, what are you talking about? What do we mean? Therefore, we see the husband consumes her peros. What does lefikach mean here? Why is that word here? So the Gemara explains. Now the tema, you might have said, you might have said, listen, I don't want to eat the peros. I'm going to hold off on eating the peros. And I'm going to see, I'll leave them on the side. And if I have, and I'll just leave them in case I'll leave them around to when I redeem her. So that's what he might have thought that he has the right to say that. Dim came and money park. And because therefore, maybe he's going to just withhold and not actually redeem her. So we'll say just leave the peros on the side, put them in a trust, and if you have to redeem her, you'll use that money to redeem her. But we don't say that. No, it's better to tell him you start consuming the peros from the day you get married, because sometimes the peros are not going to be enough to redeem her. And this way we're going to force him to have to redeem her from his own salary. So as Rashi says, that the produce, that the dividends is not enough to redeem her. But now, since he's been consuming the dividends all the time and he hasn't kept a strict accounting, he's going to end up redeeming her from his own assets. Because that was a takana, that he redeems her whether he has a lot or a little, and that he consumes whether it's a lot or a little, and he'll redeem her from whatever he has. He has to redeem her. So the Gemara then asks the question. The Gemara asks, why don't we say it's just the opposite? The Rashi explains it. Mizonos tachas peros. We had said that a mizonos, that he has to support her because he gets a salary, and he has to, and so Rashi says, but maybe he has to support her because he gets her peros, because he gets the fruits of her estate. Upirkuna, and we had said, I'm reading from Rashi, we had said that he has to redeem her because he gets her salary. Maybe he has to redeem her because we said he has to redeem her because he gets her dividends. Maybe perkona is in exchange for her salary. How do we know that mizonos is for masiyadeh? Maybe it's for peros. And how do we know perkona is for peros? Maybe it's for her salary. And what's the nafkamina here? Let's say she would say, I don't want to be supported by you, and I don't want to give you my salary. Then we're not going to accept her to say that, because in this case, if we're saying the salary is for redemption, we're not going to allow her to say that. So that's why we say here, back to the Gemara, ipachana. So why don't we reverse it? Amar Abaye says, Tiknu matzah matzah v'she'eno matzah v'she'eno matzah. We made the takanos, the common one is vis-a-vis the common one, and the last common one vis-a-vis the last common one. As Rashi explains, the mizono supporting her and getting her salary, those things are common. But a captured woman and a woman that has a lot of real estate or whatever assets that push off dividends are less common. And so therefore we instituted the common for the less common, for the more common. The two common ones are matched up. And the ones that are not common, we combine them with each other. And now the Gemara asks, now the Gemara says, Amarava Haitana Svara Savar mizonos midiaraisa. The Tana of our this Tana, we're going to cite the Brisa, is of the position that mizonos, that our husband's obligation to support his wife, is biblical. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa because it says in the verse, She'ira kisusa va'onasa. That's what it says in the pasuk. It says, and I'm going to read the pasuk from Shemos 21:10. If he takes the second wife, that he's not allowed to limit her she'ira, her kesusa, or onasa. What are these things referred to? She'ira elu mizonos. This refers to he has to support her. As it states, Asher Achu Sha'ar Ami, the people, my nation ate the She'er Ami. And so we see She'er is a reference to consumption of food. That's Mizona supporting her. Kesuso Gamashma'ah, that the Kesusa refers to literally the clothing. That's what it means. And he has to give her clothing. And onasa, zu ona amura b'Torah. Onasa, which literally means time. This refers to the ona amura b'Torah. This refers to the intercourse, which is often mentioned in the Torah, as it states, by the words of Lavan the Aramean, which he said to Yaakov when Yaakov ran away from him. And he stipulated with him about his daughters, Rachel and Leah. He says, "Im tanes benosai." He says, "You're not allowed to violate inoy with them," meaning you have to give them time. And it doesn't just mean physical time, the intercourse. It means that a husband is responsible to make time, to give his wife attention and time. So, but here it means technically speaking, the intercourse. So we see from here that the ona refers to intercourse. So those are the three things that we see biblically according to this Tana that the husband has to provide for his wife. She'ira, food, kisusa, clothing, onasa, the intercourse. Rabbi Elazar argues, he says, She'ira zu ona. He says what it refers to She'ira, that refers to the intercourse. That each man, I'll call she'er b'saro, to the flesh, you shall not come close to reveal her nakedness. This is the expression of the erva, but we see from here that she'er is said with respect to the intercourse. Kesusa kamashmao, kesusa means clothing, and onosa eu mizonos. Onosa means mizonos, means support, and we saw this in last week's parasha because it says vayancha vayaribecha, that he afflicted you and he withheld from you the food. So we see from here that Vayancha is said with respect to the affliction of withholding food. And then we see Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says on top of 48a, She'rak Susa. What does that mean? He says it means Lafum She'era Tain Kisusa. According to her body, you have to give her a type of clothing. Shalo yitain lo shalyaldo as a kina. Don't dress a young girl like an old girl. Shal zakena layaldo. You're not allowed to dress the older girl like the younger girl. And that's what She'rak Susa means. And what does Kisusa v'onasa mean? Lafum onasa tain Kisusa. According to the season, give her the proper clothes to wear. That you cannot give the new clothes in the winter. In the winter, you need old clothes. They're going to keep you warmer because in the summer, you can't give her new clothes because the new clothes are warmer, they're thicker. And you can't give her worn out clothes in the rainy season. In the winter, she needs thicker clothing. Okay, we'll stop here. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to address them.